disappearance, murder, suicide, and the search for justice. It's all part of the tragic saga in the case of Washington native Susan Cox-Powell that continues to unfold more than a decade later.
Susan vanished from her Utah home just before Christmas in 2009. Her husband, Josh Powell, was immediately the prime suspect. Now, as police investigated Powell, he and Susan's 2 children moved to Pierce County. Eventually, Washington state authorities took the kids away from Powell and placed them into temporary custody of Susan Powell's parents. But Josh Powell was still allowed to have visitation rights. Now, one of those visitations ended in Powell killing his 2 little boys and himself in 2012.
The policy manuals for social health services used to say that their goal was safety of the children and reunification, and as the same on equal footing. And we want them to change that to say safety of the children is #1, period, no question.
Well, today, jury selection began in a civil case that Susan Cox-Powell's parents filed against Washington's Department of Social and Health Services.
Now, the lawsuit claims the state could have done more to prevent their deaths of their grandchildren, Charlie and Braden. Q13's Olivia Lavoie here with more on the arguments the jurors are expected to hear. Olivia?
Well, guys, this case is complex and very emotional, but much of it boils down to this question. While ultimately a judge ordered that Josh Powell get visitations with his children, could DSHS and CPS have persuaded the judge to not let Josh Powell around his children at all, therefore preventing the murders? Reading the brief submitted to the court from both sides, it's clear both sides have a very different perspective of how everything unfolded, leading up to the murders of Charlie and Braden Powell and the suicide of their father, Josh. But both sides can agree that on that fateful morning, a DSHS employee drove the boys to Josh Powell's home for a supervised visit. Documents say the boys ran ahead of the supervisor and Josh was able to get them inside before locking the supervisor out. Not long after, documents say Josh attacked his sons and set the home on fire, killing all 3 of them.
This was the preventable death of 2 beautiful boys, Charlie and Braden, and that there was things that should have been done, could have been done by the agency, DSHS and CPS, to ensure their safety. And that when there were certain red flags, those were either ignored or were not responded to in a way that kept those boys as safe as they could have been.
Bremner, who is representing the parents of Susan Powell in this case, says DSHS failed to give the judge important information that was presiding over the children's custody placement. But the state sees it otherwise. Documents filed on their behalf says the judge was presented with all the facts, and documents explain that while Josh Powell was suspected in his wife's disappearance, there was no documented child abuse or neglect that suggested he was a threat to his children. However, attorney Ann Bremner says there were several people who notified DSHS with their concerns that Josh could hurt Braden and Charlie. Another big issue and dispute between both sides is DSHS's decision to move the visitations with Josh Powell and his sons from a state facility to Josh Powell's home. Documents show the state feels that decision was made appropriately and that the court was informed that the children were now having their visits with their father at his home. The other side of this disagrees entirely and wants a jury to weigh in.
We're looking for jurors that have an open mind, that will listen to this case and to look at all of this and tell us, you know, what really happened here, what's fair, what should we be doing for our children in this state, and how should they be protected? Those are all issues. On the other side, the state's saying, you know, these are tough positions, you know, these caseworkers work hard, they have the best of intentions, you know, et cetera. So that's their side of the case, and they're saying that what they did was appropriate under the circumstances.
And there's a lot more to this case, and again, it's very complicated. Everyone agrees what happened is a horrific tragedy, but to what degree the state could have prevented it and what their liability is or is not really isn't that simple. Opening statements in this case are expected to begin within a week or so. We're still waiting on a statement from the Department of Children, Youth and Families, the defendant in this case. However, we know one of their big arguments, according to court documents, is that jurors cannot hold them liable for Josh Powell's intentional actions. So we'll have to see how this all plays out in court. For now, guys, send it back to you.
All right, Olivia, thank you.